From the Clock Tower, this is the C.S. Lewis Book Club. I'm Dan.
And I'm Alex. Welcome to our book club. We're on a walking tour through Middle-earth. Our road has taken us into the Lord of the Rings, and we're pursuing it with eager feet until they get weary. If you know that reference, then bravo.
If we weren't live on the cameras, I would have stopped you and been like, you kind of jumped in a little eager with your I'm Alex.
Did I?
No.
We could go again?
It was good. In this episode, we'll be talking about the first book of the Fellowship of the Ring, all 12 chapters. We're not reviewing the book, but we will probably spoil if you haven't read it yet. So if you don't want that, pause here, go and read, and we'll be here when you get back.
All right. I do have a little...
You have an agenda.
Ominous note. Yeah, I have an agenda again. Because I keep saying we're not here to, like you just said, we're not here to review the book. We're explaining our experience in it, which is different, but sometimes that involves us going through story elements. We're not just here talking about our emotion colors or something. So, but with this part of this first book,
I'm a yellow. If that's what Alex.
We know.
Hey,
the Reaper Cheeps, the yellow Reaper Cheeps. We are. So the first part, we have the two main sections of our podcast. We're going to spend the first part talking more about story elements. But this book, and when I say this book, I mean book one of the Fellowship, and I think there's actually 6 books in the Lord of the Rings. There's 3 pairs of books. So this first book, there's what I think is the biggest, the most important part of it is not even in the movies. And this reminded me of something that I think will be very surprising to our listeners. But it's not surprising to me because I know you really well. Have you seen the movies, The Lord of the Rings by Peter Jackson?
I have seen parts of them. I think I watched the first one all the way through, maybe. Of the
maybe.
3. No. Sorry.
Okay, this is funny to me because
I said this, and I need you to take me at my word when I say I'm the noobest of the noob when it comes to everything Lord of the Rings.
Right, yes, which is funny because I think in most of the circles that I run in, watching Lord of the Rings on the regular is like that's just assumed. And especially since we have a podcast where we're talking about the books, the fact that you've never really or can't be sure that you've watched the movies is really wild.
Thanks for inviting me to the book club.
No, it's good. It's good. It's a very Tom Bombadil thing about you. It's like you can't even be swayed by the power of the ring. So
well, I need to rhyme every line from now on. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, but there were hints that you hadn't seen the movies, and anyway,
absolutely, yep.
So the second part, the second half of this episode, I would like to.
You're also asking that question because I walked in and I was like, tell me the truth. Tom Bombadil isn't in the movie.
Right. You don't even know that.
Like, don't talk about that yet.
Yeah, those are some of the hints.
I knew when I was reading it, I was like, I bet they did not cut this in the movie.
Yeah. Well, he's conspicuously not in the movie if you've read the books because he's a merry fellow. I mean, his coat is blue and his boots are yellow. You wouldn't not notice him if you were in the book. And so, if you were in the movie. And so things like that are big tells that you you haven't watched the movie, and that's funny to me. But but anyway, I feel like as far as our approach to this book, especially like being from we're strangers in Middle Earth from Narnia. And so that's where our strengths are. Tom Bombadil operates in a way that I feel is very like Lewis, I think, loved this character. In fact, I think he took it even farther in some directions.
For a guy who's willing to drop Santa Claus into the Chronicles of Narnia.
Exactly. And I think there are similar elements. There's a lot of mythology. Tolkien wanted the Lord of the Rings to operate as a mythology.
Yeah.
And Tom Bombadil is a very mythological type character. So I'd like to, if I haven't already exhausted a lot of my emotion about Tom Bombadil yet, I would like that second part to be more Tom Bombadil focused.
We're going to do it.
And other adjacent story elements to Tom Bombadil. So
you have a note here. What C.S. Lewis books did this remind you of? Which I think is great.
Yeah.
I told you, Lady
Goldberry?
Goldberry, Tenedril,
Yes.
Mother Earth.
Mm-hmm.
That one stuck out for sure. So, Paralandra.
Mm-hmm.
You go.
Me?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, so you mentioned Father Christmas from The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. Tom Bombadil has a lot going. There's similar vibes with that. Also, this journey, there are elements of the story that are like a race. And you're being pursued, right? Especially the last chapters that reminded me a lot of The Horse and His Boy. And there's a lot of...
Silver Chair.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Silver Chair. They're on this journey, and there's signs. They even get a token on the bridge to say that...
They kind of have these safe places, little like staying posts, and then it's pushed back out into the next journey of unknown. And
yeah, and wondering where Gandalf is, and just that confusion, the kind of lunar theme of dreamlike experience, going into the Shadow Realm with the ring and being stabbed by the Morgul blade and all those things. I also thought Horse and His Boy, when every time there's a song, there's a lot of, well, actually, so like chapters 7 and 8, which are very, well, 6, 7, and 8, but that have Tom Bombadil, where he's kind of like the focus. I was reading these chapters to my kids at night. They usually fall asleep, but I'm dyslexic. I have a hard time reading out loud, and I didn't have a hard time with those chapters, because even the way the way Tolkien's writing has this rhythmic, there's like a meter to it. It's almost sing-song, even in the prose. And then, of course, all of Bombadil's dialogue has that kind of, it's almost like a trot. It's like a little, it's a fun pace and meter to the way that he talks. I don't want to go too
You're
into
bombadilling again.
I'm bombadilling. I can't help it. My mind kept jumping to Narnian books, right? Even the Magician's Nephew and the creation of Narnia and the descriptions of Goldberry and stuff like that. It was just, it felt like so familiar, and I just loved it. I really enjoyed my experience reading these chapters.
Yeah. Well, I can read the summary, or do you want to get it?
You can read it, yeah.
All right. This is written by Alexander Hale. Gandalf the Wizard has discovered that the magic ring the hobbit Frodo Baggins has inherited from his older cousin Bilbo is the one ring of the Dark Lord Sauron. Frodo accepts the task of delivering the ring to Rivendell, where wiser and more powerful allies might work out its destruction before it can be reclaimed and Sauron rise again to his former power. Pursued by the Dark Lord's sinister agents, Frodo and his small band of loyal friends make the dangerous journey, but not without incident or a fair amount of strange help. I like Sauron, Smaug. Tolkien liked some of those. He cared about the sounds of the words.
Yeah, remember Lewis talking about the word haunted.
Haunted.
There's kind of that ow sound that I think it means something bad. It makes me feel weird.
Yeah, Sauron.
What did you think about that descriptor, strange help, at the end? Do you think that's fair?
Fair, but the other word that you could put in there would be queer, because they always talk about the queer help they were receiving.
Yeah. I went a little more PC.
What were you thinking about? That's what I thought.
No, when I wrote it, that's what it felt like. It felt like all his help was strange, especially it's I don't want to get too bombadilly again, but strange help.
Yeah.
And even the descriptions of Strider, it's not something that they expected to be where they would find help. They're looking for Gandalf. They want the familiar help.
Yeah.
And so I use strange as like counterposition to familiarity, that the help isn't exactly what they expected.
Yeah. We'll get into this in part 1. And for themes, mine was moral responsibility. And you get it when Frodo is lamenting the time that he's living, when this darkness is coming across the land. And Gandalf says, you can't choose your time. You can just choose what you do with the time. And then again, I've had the same thing come back to me when they're going through the forest, and it talks about the forest essentially was just pushing them on this path, and they realized they had no control over the direction. They just had to, go through the forest the way it was sending them. This is a theme in my life of we're all pushed into paths and situations that we can't control, and reminding ourselves, it's a little bit what's the prayer?
Serenity
the
prayer.
Serenity prayer. Yeah. Just of being able to recognize the differences between where your agency can have power and where it doesn't, and accepting both of those. I think it's cool.
Yeah, that reminded me of Ransom, right?
Yeah.
He has to go do this thing. He doesn't want to, but that doesn't mean that he's not. And that's like the demonstration of bravery happens when you are reluctant. I think sometimes it's, that reminds me just of the difference between feeling something and actually being that virtue or expressing that virtue. Not expressing. That's the wrong word. Exercising. Yeah. Exercising the virtue. To be brave doesn't mean you don't feel fear. In fact, you can't be brave unless you're afraid.
Yeah.
So, and I think the moral courage comes, or the moral responsibility, like you put it, you have to kind of be reluctant. Otherwise, it's just you're doing what you want.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which, another Lewisian phrase right there.
Right.
You have friendship and husbandry.
Yeah. So friendship. Here's one part that you don't get from the movie that you do. That's kind of interesting from the book. Is Farmer Maggot is somebody that Frodo's worried about because of past experiences when he was growing up in
Stealing his
Buckland.
mushrooms.
Yeah, and just to realize that, what our interpretations of things, especially as kids, maybe it was just we didn't understand the not that Farmer Maggot was like kind to him in a secret way, but I was thinking just about hobbits generally, and maybe the way that we judge each other a lot. Like, hobbits have so many good virtues. You can see the pettiness in them that is a result of their of the safety and security that they have at the work of other hands, other benevolent figures that we'll meet one later. But and so the pettiness of like the Sackville Bagginses, and talking about, we learn a lot about hobbits, and but one thing that I think outshines all of that pettiness is the friendship and what their friendship means. And I just loved that they knew more about what Frodo was doing than they let on, and it wasn't like, we're going to go have fun on this journey with you. I think that's kind of the feel from the movies a little bit, but in the book, it really is, they're going to go help their friend. They're not even really considering how hard it would be, not because they're naive about it, but because that wouldn't diminish their responsibility as friends.
Oh, and in fact, I think Merry or Pippin, when they're revealing to Frodo that they already know the plan and they're going with him into it, Frodo says, "Oh, this is going to be dangerous. Don't know if we're coming back." And he's like, "No, that's why we're going with you. Right. If you're my friend and you're going into danger, then that's why we would come with you."
Exactly. Yeah. Merry has a line exactly about that.
Yeah.
So, yes.
I love that.
And the husbandry, I think I'll talk a little bit more when we get into the Bombadil.
And one other thing about the friendship is I love that pettiness. Frodo's trying to hide this from his friends. He's trying to protect his friends. Every one of them is a true friend, and in that, they're trying to like hide what they know or hide things from each other so they can protect each other. And then they finally have this moment where they all come together and just like, "Okay, you're my friends," and there's the openness and sharing. And then it's like, you see the depth of the friendship in that moment. I thought that was really
cool. And they can really just let go of the guardedness, even if the guardedness is for each other rather than themselves. And I think that's learning to trust and being in a high trust community.
Yeah.
And being able to let down your guard a little bit helps things get done. Yeah. But also I think it's Frodo felt so relieved. He'd been like he felt so sad about that parting and that departure. And then it just made all of the fear that he knew he was going to be entering into, it just eased it a lot. So,
yeah. All right. Should we take a break and then jump into part one?
Yep.
Okay.
See you in a bit.
Hi, my name is Theo, and I have a podcast called The Theo Show, where me and my dad talk about interesting things we're learning and try to understand them better. It's a short, fun podcast for kids and parents to enjoy together. And if you like learning new things in a simple way, this podcast is for you. So after this episode, go check out The Theo Show on Spotify or Apple Podcast. See you there.
Welcome back.
Yes.
Okay. Welcome back. You have one of your first points is about the ring and what is it? And you have in parentheses, not an allegory, which coincides perfectly with something I got from the preface, where Tolkien specifically says, and I'm going to read this, he dislikes allegory, which we've already talked about. He much prefers history, true or feigned, and its varying applicability to thought and experience of readers. I think people confuse applicability with allegory, while the one resides with the freedom of the reader, the other in the purposed domination of the author. Mm-hmm. So when you say the ring, what is it, not an allegory? I guess I wanted to lead into that with just saying it's a little fuzzy for me sometimes, because when we get to Tom Bombadil, there's such a depth of allusion, at least allusion is an allegory, right? To very spiritual things. And it seems very clear he's alluding to the greatest mythology of all. So I don't know. Help me share some thoughts on this.
Allegory, specifically, and allegory generally. I think in the way we use the word, we can just think, okay, this is an allegory in the way we understand it, because we're not as precise with our language like Tolkien is. When he's talking about allegory, he's meaning John Bunyan's Pilgrim's Progress. He's saying these characters don't have exact equivalencies.
This character is this philosophical thought in the Pilgrim's Regress.
Right, exactly.
That kind of stuff.
Yeah. So he was even asked about the ring, the One Ring. Is it a symbol of atomic power, meaning nuclear power, the atomic bomb, that sort of thing, and like the mutually assured destruction of the atomic age. And
no movie Dan did not catch on to that.
Well, I think he was even started writing that before that was revealed to the world. So he definitely didn't have that agenda to begin with. I could be wrong about that, but he said no, but it is power. And I think sometimes we'll see, I think we neglect sometimes the roles that elements of our lives or the history of our world, how there's nothing new under the sun. What's the danger of the atomic bomb, of nuclear power? What's the danger? Oh, it's nothing different than power has always been.
Yeah.
I can't help but think of media power, of the power of influencers and social media, and who gets to direct all of our opinions because they're good showmen, or they're very good at expressing ideas in ways that are catchy and sticky, right? And that maybe is more power than a person should have. And so you start to see these trends of thought that almost like a virus infect people, and it happens through the whole spectrum of belief and thought. And I think on one side, let's say it's the side that believes in moral absolutes, moral objectivity, might have the reluctance that you see in that hideous strength of Ransom saying, we can't use desperate remedies until they're desperate illnesses. We can't use their own weapons against them. They're willing to be this other side, this nefarious side. They're willing to be dishonorable in the way that they wield power, and the honorable side is not willing, and it's not, they would become the very enemy that they're fighting if they started using the same type of manipulative, lie-based powers. I think of the phrase, those who love and make a lie, as being a description of evil, of pure evil, somebody who's willing to wield dishonesty. And so for me, especially the aspect of the ring that makes Frodo disappear, that to me is dishonesty. Because you can't be seen. It's the opposite of light. Light is truth. It illuminates, right? And so the ability to disappear, it's drawing on this Greek idea called, or this, I'm not sure if it's an Aesop thing, but it's the Ring of Gyges, which is this very ancient story about a farmer who finds a ring that makes him disappear. And it's all about how quickly it corrupts somebody who might be good into somebody who has such ability to do evil that ability, that allowance, has the ability to corrupt anybody, basically. And you see that with the Ring of Power. Gandalf's reluctant. He doesn't want to use it because he doesn't feel like he would not be corrupted. That's something that we really see. So it's not an allegory. It's not like, oh, look, they've got the atomic bomb, But that doesn't mean it's not applicable to that situation or any situation in which you have power.
Yeah. And I like how he distinguishes between that when he loving history, and I thought it's interesting that he loved whether real or feigned. Like, didn't matter if it was a true history, and yet the way he writes this book, it sounds like a true history of like this actually, and that's obviously why it's a good story, but that it leaves with us the freedom of the reader to relate our experience with the story and with the history and to glean from it with whatever we bring to the story.
Yeah.
It's kind of cool. Instead of forcing us into a way of thinking.
Right, exactly. If it were just the allegory for the bomb or whatever, it's like, no, now the responsibility of the morals, I take part in it. I'm part of the author of the morality that I'm learning from it. So,
yeah. So what are the story elements you wanted to touch on for the first section?
Yeah, we learn a lot about Gollum. We learn about how the ring even came to Frodo, and it's fun to. We just finished The Hobbit, and so that's fresh to us. Tolkien did make some revisions when he was writing The Lord of the Rings back to The Hobbit because it made. But then he even plays with that as if he's making revisions to Bilbo's dishonesty about the way that he told the story. Because remember, he's translating Bilbo's story for us.
And I like that Gandalf says something about like, well, no one will read your book, Bilbo. That was great.
That's really good. And so Bilbo's original story, and this was the story that was first published, is that Bilbo won the ring in the riddle game instead of, when you read the book, that's not exactly true. They do play a riddle game, but the ring was never up for that, or wasn't what was at risk.
Yeah, Gollum didn't know he had it when they were playing the game. It was about his life, right?
It was about his life, not the ring. Yeah. And so that was just so cleverly done to be able to take the new idea of the precariousness of the power of the ring and how it already started to influence Bilbo even then. And Bilbo actually is this really great example of somebody who's pretty immune to the power of the ring.
And he was the first person who ever gave it up.
Yeah, ever willingly gave it. That's
with a little help from Gandalf.
That's right.
I liked let's see, why when Frodo asked why he couldn't get rid of the ring with Gollum, he hated it and he loved it, just like he hated and loved himself. Mm-hmm. What'd you think of that line?
I feel like I understand what it means. It's not like, oh yeah, this is one thing I hate and love about myself, but like it's not a foreign idea. It's that I guess addiction is that's what it reminds me of, right? It's this thing that you love so much and you hate that it has so much control over you. The dragon sickness is this, right? You're so focused on owning something that it starts having power over you. It owns you, rather.
Yeah. So when I was reading this, it reminded me of Till We Have Faces and the love for Psyche. That's 9/10 hatred. Same thing, that love that's possessive, that's really about you owning something.
Going through the little bits of story feels a little staccato to me. I don't know, my mind has been in this kind of musical flow, and this seems like it's taking me out of it a little bit. But what about you? What are some of the things about the story Was there anything since we all? I mean, well, I don't know. Since you haven't watched the movies, for me, the story is so like second nature, like its applicability. I don't want to.
Usually, I've read the books, I don't watch the movies is like a flex. So
I know. No, see, exactly, it is. But it's like what I would see if I went on my account on X is somebody would have posted some joke about. Wasting a whole day watching all 3 of the extended versions of The Lord of the Rings, and I knowingly nod, been there, done it, sort of thing. So it's just kind of funny. It is a flex. It is a flex, but it's almost alarming how impressive it is. Well, I would say it's either impressive.
I guess Bilbo's in action with the ring, or Frodo. I don't know. That's a little too much. I just haven't.
No, it's very bombadilly of you. That's the term I'm going to use.
You were going to ask me other story elements. I think. Well, what are the other story elements that you really enjoyed? I mean, I can go into any one of them, but let your music flow.
I think we've gotten used to, as a consuming society, is this idea of like. The observer having kind of this omniscient perspective. And there's parts of the story that play out that are kind of almost seem silly, because how could the character not know? Or how they talk about, I can't think of anything specifically, but this is a feeling that I kept getting about like Butterbur or even Gandalf just not really having the answer for the question that's being presented to them. And it almost seems like, hey, guys, haven't you been paying attention? Well, they're not paying attention to the whole story that's presented to us. They're in the dark a lot. And even the idea, I guess here's one of the things. Even understanding the story narrative of the ring and Isildur having lost it and it being called Isildur's Bane and Gandalf needing to figure that out and people kind of knowing what that means. And we'll get this later in the book. But it's not like everybody just has ready in their mind the dilemma of the ring. They're figuring out what the problem is as they've already started to try to solve it. And I think when you realize that there's a lot less awareness of what is even going on, even from the characters, it helps things make a little more sense, ironically. And I think it's a real demonstration of Tolkien's genius, that he knows how to write what's going on in the mind of somebody who doesn't know what's going on. But as far as like answering your question about the story elements to it and how that plays out, what it does is it almost makes me feel comfortable. I don't really know what's going on. Sometimes it's not like the puzzle's being made. The puzzle of the story isn't being made clearly where everything fits in. It almost doesn't make sense sometimes where they are, where they're going, why they're doing what they're doing. And then to find out the characters don't really know either. It's always like, okay, I'm part of this.
It's interesting. You've used the word like making sense a couple times. And I was listening to this thing the other day. It was talking about Harry Potter, which I've been reading through Harry Potter with my daughter, and just how in a good story, if it's a good story, your mind is actively trying to connect the dots and make things make sense that actually don't make sense. And he talks about like the sickle Knuts, whatever, their monetary system, the way magic works all through Harry Potter. He's like, it literally, if you try to like make logical sense of how magic works, it just doesn't. Like it's however the author wants to use it is what it does. And same thing here. Like I saw some, I don't know, meme or something about just like eagles picking up Frodo and flying him to the volcano to throw the ring in time. So, and it's just like, I guess what I'm trying to explore here is what is it that has to make sense that obviously makes this one of the best stories ever, and what are the things that we're willing to go along with the story wherever Tolkien wants to take us.
Well, yeah. See that those are specifics that of like the idea that I think is kind of a lost art, right? Now when people have magical powers, we think like X-Men. Well, this person has this specific power. But Gandalf's power is pretty enigmatic the whole time. Yeah. You don't know exactly what he can do. And even by a rule, he doesn't do certain things when he's around the hobbits. And So like what are the Eagles? And the fact that they have their own society, they have their own priorities, and they're kind of separate from what's going on. It reminds me of Perelandra seeing the people in the cave, or even in the Voyage of the Dawn Treader seeing the mer people. I guess that happens in Perelandra as well.
Yeah.
And it's like this idea, we've been spoon-fed so much about like, and this is what this person is, and you can figure them out in one description, and they will never be more dynamic than that, so you never have to feel like you don't know what's going on or who somebody is. And it's like even side characters have a dynamic range to their growth and development that you can't just like hold on to it. You can't pin it down.
That's why Christopher Nolan's Batman Begins is awesome. I like it. Personal opinion.
What specifically about that?
Well, it was the first movie I watched after several years of watching zero movies, and I loved it just because it was this very human story that I could relate with, of somebody who was put into these positions and how he developed and whatever else. And there was no obvious like, this is Batman's superpower and this is how he defeats the enemy. It was very conflicted through the whole thing, and the enemy, and there's actually part of him, and based on his past, that would be attracted to the other side. And yet he, stands up obviously as the hero. So
right, in that movie specifically, there's a real darkness about him.
Yeah,
before he makes a certain decision, right? So yeah, this is what's coming to my mind. As far as narcissistic personality disorders, what they want is for the world, somebody who has this what is it? Asking for a friend, right? What narcissism wants their relationships to be are static, non-changing, and they'll almost force their relations into a static persona and project this identity label on other people, so that they become this main character, the only one who has any dynamic range. And so reading this, I wonder, I would actually assume that if you were reading stories like this more often, the likelihood of your brain having that narcissistic lens on the world would diminish.
I love that. Yeah.
Right? So because you start seeing, you can't grasp everything. You can't have everything figured out. Everybody's kind of a wild card. And so you kind of just have to go in not with the confidence of supposed understanding. You're going through the story like, okay, nothing's firm. I got to be delicate, but if I stand too long, I'll sink in the quicksand. It's like you have to keep moving even though you don't really get it. And that's what's great about these long books, especially Tolkien, who's so descriptive about everything. You can kind of get lost in it, but there's like this osmosis effect. Don't worry, it'll start to accrete. The story will make sense if you just stick with it. That was maybe a little too much rambling. But as far as like the elements of the story, or the general vibe that I got from reading this, is just like, it is so good and it is so deep and it is broad. It's a big story.
Yeah. Broad.
How did you feel about the Black Riders? Good.
Not as bad as I should have, according to Strider.
Right. So
I didn't quite understand how evil they were, which, obviously intentional. But yeah, I like that he says that to Frodo. You're not scared enough of them, because if you knew what they were, you would be.
Right. But see, that plays right into what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Like you can see this. And if you want to just say, oh, that's just this general bad feeling. No, there's a history to them. And the evil behind them is deep. And Strider has a little more experience. And so even though they're running away from them, they're scared of them.
Yeah.
It's different. It's not just a tiger. It's a ghost too.
Yeah. One thought that came to me as they'd meet the different strange helps and people is a little bit of a question of why don't they help them more? Like Gandalf leaves them. The elves, they help and then they leave them. Bombadil helps, leaves them at the edge of his kingdom. I don't know. That just keeps occurring to me as they go through their journey. This is the Ring of Power. Apparently it decides the fate of all of Middle Earth, and yet everyone just is like, here's a cart of food. We're glad we helped you to the ferry. Good luck.
Yeah, but they don't know everything that's going on. And
Some of them don't.
And they kind of can't. Even the elves don't really know.
Yeah.
They don't really understand what that's all about. And so...
I could ask.
I guess, but then Frodo doesn't want to tell them either.
Yeah.
If Gandalf can't hold the ring, if he can't possess it, nobody can, you know? And so the fact that Frodo is simple, that's actually to his benefit. The fact that he's not powerful means that the power of the ring will be slower to corrupt him. And so there's a lot of not knowing. That's hard for us, not knowing everything. The eagles, right? Why don't the eagles just help? Well, they got other things. Maybe it doesn't bother them. And Tom Bombadil is... Oh.
I think we should take a break and get to Tom Bombadil in part 2.
No, that's a good idea.
All right, let's take a break.
This episode is brought to you by being a self-regulator. Did you know that you can take responsibility of your own behavior and even how you feel? You don't have to wait for your parents to tell you what to do. You can think about what they've taught you and make good choices on your own. This is called being a self-regulator. When you're feeling bored, try to find something fun or helpful to do, like drawing, reading, or cleaning up a mess. And if you're feeling too wild or your body just feels off, you can calm yourself down by taking deep breaths or finding a quiet activity. Becoming responsible and being a self-regulator are a big part of growing up. Talk with your mom or dad about what it means to be a self-regulator and show them how responsible you can be. Okay, now back to the show.
Alex, welcome back.
Okay.
Tom Bombadil.
So the theme that I used for this is husbandry. Have you heard that word before?
Yeah.
It's a word that's always been a little confusing to me because it doesn't necessarily mean the husband of a wife. Obviously, it does mean that. But husbandry is usually a term for caring for animals.
Yeah.
Taming them. Does that remind you of any other books we've covered?
Put me on the spot. Let's see. What's his name? Ransom. All the animals coming in and out of his house.
Once he has this talk with them,
yeah,
you know, they're tame. There's something about Ransom that is very husbandy, even though he's not a married man. Right? So there's that husbandry. Also, it reminded me of the animals toward the end of The Magician's Nephew, where Aslan calls animals to him and he speaks with them and breathes on them. And then they become talking beasts. And so there's something about this relationship of the wild and the domestic, but the domestic from a still natural perspective. And that it's hard because I don't think that our categories really cleanly separate those in the right way. You could think of before. I think it was in The Hobbit. We were talking about the wildness of like the jungle, and in a cartoon, it always looks really nice because it has that really clean. It's presented to you in this an analogical way of look at these nice plants all growing and friendly together, and you don't have to worry about stepping on a centipede.
I'm trying to think what movie this reminds me of. If someone's like in the jungle and then all of a sudden it's just like like the plant just like
Emperor's New Groove.
Yeah.
There's like the spider that eats the bug. That's like making fun of the
no, this is the jungle.
Yeah, it's the jungle. It's dangerous and it's awful.
There's a panther behind you.
And so you have elements of beauty of nature, of natural, even using that word natural as being like organic and flowing. And I think of like the Taoist concept of going with the flow. It's just natural, just let it be sort of thing. And then people who are skeptics of that type of mentality are like, no, the world is awful and nature just wants you dead and wants to eat you. And those are both true. And it's like, well, what's the difference between them? And I think it's husbandry. I think it's humanity, right? Even in our modern dialogue about humans' place in the world, some people think of us as being like totally separate, as not belonging to the world because we're different. There's some things about us that are totally different that no other animal has. Rationality, and with that, sometimes evil. And so because of that, some of the discourse, some of the way that we talk about it as well, the best thing for the earth is for humans to not be here. But then what's the point? Without humans, there's no...
You either believe in a hierarchy or you don't.
Go on.
Well, I mean, you're saying it would be better that sentient beings weren't on the earth so that non-sentient beings could just exist
sure,
without sentience.
Right.
Which is a weird
so with
thing
that,
to say.
it betrays an idea or a belief that sentience isn't anything other than some accident or phenomenon. These are the people who would deny their own consciousness to prove a point.
Yeah.
It's silliness when you take it logically to its end. So Tom, he's not wild. Okay, so there's like this
But he's not a tame lion.
He's not a tame lion. Right. Well, he's not Aslan either. But he does represent something in kind of this allegorical way. When Goldberry's asked who he is, he says, he's him.
He's him. I know. I am that I am.
But it's not that.
But it's not that.
It's not that. It's kind of like Tor from Paralandra representing his maker in a way that you could commit idolatry very easily, right? And so
nice.
That where it's like he represents something, and this is where it's very mythological. He's not Eru, Iluvatar. He's not the incarnation. He was there before Morgoth came in and corrupted the world. I mean, he ruined
Sorry, you
the
lost
world.
me. Where did Morgoth come in?
Well, Gandalf talks about it a little bit. Well, no, actually, Tom Bombadil explains with his who he is. He was here before the evil one entered, and we'll learn more about this, about the creation of Arda in the Silmarillion. And it existed before Morgoth came into it. There's a lot of intentional association with the fall and the garden. And so he's kind of like a pre-fallen being, and even his being isn't really that important. It's just he's a representation or carryover of the pre-corrupted world. And so he almost represents Adam more than he does represents anything else or any celestial type being. He's like what it means to care for the earth.
And I don't want to break Tolkien's heart and get too allegorical here, but his little oasis with Goldberry, it's at the heart of this wild forest with and at some point it talks about the evil of the tree and its wildness, and it's calls it evil. Mm-hmm. Right. And it's surrounded in this forest with the center being Tom and Lady Goldberry. And even when Frodo dreams, the evil comes all the way up to the very edges. Like when Frodo comes out of the house at first, he thought there would just be lawn all the way up to the door because there's some, I don't know, lots of images in my head.
I think the lawn is actually, he's taking it the other way because lawns are manicured, right?
Oh, yeah.
Right. So because here's an interesting thing. Think about how the hobbits think of Tom. Do you have any association with that feeling? I think I do. And I experienced it last night. My daughter woke up and she didn't come to my wife's side of the bed. She came to my side of the bed. She was scared. She was feeling, she didn't say she had a nightmare, but she was just feeling sad. And she needed me. She needed protection, but protection in a masculine way. And that's something that happens not too frequently. But when the kids come into our room, they come to my side when they're scared. It's interesting. And hopefully I do represent Tom to them. Hopefully I do represent this. Once you're behind the walls, the stone walls of our home, heed not the nightly noises. You're safe in a way that you might not understand, but you don't have to worry about the precariousness of the danger of the night or the wild or Old Man Willow or whatever it might be, or even the Black Riders. Or
not only don't feel scared, but also be merry and laugh.
Right.
Yeah.
And he's so much of a father, a dad. Maybe he would go by daddy almost because he's kind of silly. It's almost whimsical and childish. His exposure to Or
if we ever get a T-shirt made for this, it needs to be a really good drawing of Tom Bombadil with Daddy. Please. Alex would hate that shirt. My wife, Alex, would hate that shirt.
Yeah, I would think a lot of people would.
Anytime anybody says Daddy, she gets squeamish.
Okay,
So
we'll
it's
just say
used
Dada.
occasionally
Dada.
Nah.
Yeah, my kids don't call me Daddy. They call me Dada. And I think that's probably because I wouldn't let them. So there's like this security, and I remember feeling like that way about the adults that took care of me when I was growing up. It's like I didn't even think of how, and then you grow up and you're like, oh man, my dad was going through it.
Yeah,
that was
big time.
you know about certain time periods, and like that's a difficult time for him, and he kind of kept his cool as far as I was concerned. And it's like maybe that's the Tomness, the bombadiliousness.
that hits home. I in college, I had this weird, I don't know if I talked about this back in C.S. Lewis sometime, but there was this moment where I was driving to work, and I was about to graduate, I think, and it hit me this way, and I was engaged, and I was getting married, starting my family, and all of a sudden, the weight of what I was looking ahead of responsibility, of taking care of and providing for my family and eventually kids, and then just thinking about my dad and raising 10 kids. And I was aware of some of the different stresses that put on him trying to run his business and different things. And I called him weeping and it just was like, Dad, I thank you. Like, thank you for carrying that so we could, be raised in a good home. And anyways, so yeah, Tom Bombadil.
I even think there's something to his nonsense words in the songs that he's singing, and the fact that he is always singing. That the song and like this natural beauty of a song, of music, and that he's participating. And when things don't work out, he fills it with a nonsense word. And what it made me think of, and this is a stretch, but what it made me think of is like when I'm giving chores or just work for my kids to learn how to have responsibilities, sometimes I just make that crap up. It's like, It's not like, oh, and the right thing for you to do right now is this. It's no, you just need a rule. You need some structure so that your mind can make sense of things. And I'm going to make this up. It reminds me of Calvin's dad and Calvin and Hobbes, who just like makes up the answers to the things. Not that I'm like intentionally lying to my kids, but I'm creating
structure where there isn't. No, and that's where when you talked about the rhyming and the song, my thought was just music is culture. Like music comes out, like usually when you talk about what is the culture of that people, music is one of the first things that people talk about. And he sings to the tree to get the tree to obey him, like that same type of thing of taming, of giving culture of. Anyways, that's cool. Did I ruin your line of thinking?
No, that's exactly it. So yeah, it's just there's I think it's deeper. I think Tolkien was reluctant to explain who Tom was. And not because I don't think he knew, but because he's like, because this one's allegorical, it's like this is a vibe. This is a feeling. This is something you should learn. You should read through those chapters and have a sense of like the benevolent, chivalrous masculine. That reminds me of like, okay, so that dichotomy of the domesticated and the wild. If you've ever read The Green Knight, or there's a movie now that's really well done about Gawain and the Green Knight, and it's all about this, what it means to be a knight. Not like the Green Knight, but Gawain's becoming a knight through this and proving what chivalry is, what the duties of a knight errant is. And it's through this kind of, if you don't have the background, if you don't have the prerequisites to understand why a knight going about some journey where the end result is him getting his head cut off, why that doesn't make sense. And I think of Beorn, and there's like this connection between Beorn being a wild type masculine that's kind of on the verge. Maybe I think of my relationship with my dad as Beorn sometimes, where it's like, gotta be delicate. There's Dad. He's kind of this powerful figure, and I'm a little timid around him. And then it switches like almost very easily into Tom Bombadil, where he's the only thing that can make me feel safe right now.
Yeah. We haven't talked about, I feel like, the Ring of Power and Tom Bombadil, that he asks for Frodo and Frodo easily gives it to him, just almost immediately. And that Tom is able to hold it, put it on, looks through it. There was something funny about seeing Tom Bombadil's eye through the ring, and then hand it back to Frodo. And then when Frodo puts it on, he said, my eyesight hasn't gotten that bad yet. Come back over here and sit down. If I was an author, I would have worried that I was almost ruining my own story. Like, you built this whole story and all the characters, and this was Frodo's own concern. Is even Gandalf's terrified about what this ring could do, and yet Tom's laughing and playing with the ring. And you almost are making a mock of the thing that's supposed to be the centerpiece of the story.
So then why would Tolkien do that?
I like really another logical conclusion would be Frodo be like, hey, you keep the ring. Apparently it has zero weight for you. Just keep it in your drawer. Obviously no one can get in here unless Tom wants it.
They do address that in the next book. They address that exact question.
Okay.
And it doesn't answer any questions the way that they address it. I don't want to give too much away before we read that. But why doesn't he take it? But what it shows is there's something about it. Looking at this as a journey, as Frodo's journey, and we went through Bilbo's journey, and these journeys are like our journey. They're the hero's journey. And I know I've said something about avoiding narcissism before, but
it's me.
But on your journey, your hero's journey, there are elements of this story that can be applied to your own story. And they're serious, but you'll get through them, and other people have gotten through them, and there are people who are almost so far above it, this fatherly type figure. And it just like the analogy of being a child and the way that you see your dad, and that maybe that analogy is intentional to have then, because that's literally true about us now. It's just maybe our dad's a little farther or more removed by a veil sort of thing. And to see that, yes, our lives are serious, but not so much. There's
not.
Yeah, exactly.
This is so good. I didn't see that, but you come to understand God or the character of God, and you could accurately draw the conclusion that whether I die tomorrow or die in 20 years, it doesn't matter, right? It doesn't change this plan. But what I'm dealing with today does matter to me, and because it matters to me, he chooses to make it matter to him. That type of thinking.
We have a hard time not diminishing things by trying to broaden our mind, right? It's think what you could think. There's the Carl Sagan pale blue dot idea of everything that's ever happened in history happened in this blue dot that's seen obscured by one of, from this direction, however many millions of miles away. And it's like, that actually doesn't diminish at all everything that has happened on Earth. What it does is it broadens now our brains can't do that. We can't literally comprehend big numbers. Remember, who was it that said, was it Malacandra who says, I try not to talk to even the Eldilla about big numbers.
Yeah.
Because it's like it doesn't really serve them because they're incapable of really understanding it. I could be wrong that he doesn't say that he says that about the Eldilla, but that they make it a point not to talk about big numbers to the mortal creatures, and it's not because it's because we can't help but it's like our capacity is this finite space, and if you try to make something smaller in it by showing that something else is, or if you try to show that something else is bigger, everything else gets smushed down. It reminds me of Homer Simpson saying that he can't learn new things because every time he learns a new thing, something else gets pushed out, right? Yeah. And that's not true about reality, even though it is kind of a truth about our perspective, about our capacity.
But what's so anytime you can read a history, real or feigned, that helps push you into those boundary areas, it has such a humbling effect.
If you're willing to go
you keep
in and out.
bringing up narcissism.
Yeah.
And it's like, but what's cool is in these conversations, in this story, it just kind of pushes you just out enough to realize so that there's so much unknowable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that going back to undulate or go between, your life is really important, and it's everything that you have the capacity to experience. It'll fill that whole vessel. And at the same time, you're this tiny little marble that an alien's playing with, sort of thing.
Yeah.
I was just thinking of the end of Men in Black.
Men in Black, yeah. Have seen that movie.
So I do want to keep, I've got more about Tom Bombadil, right? He saves them.
We haven't even talked about Lady Goldberry.
I know, and maybe
Stop being so sexist.
Impossible.
Some people might accuse you of talking about her as sexist. So
there's
no
no
win
win.
situation, just dive right in.
There's no win. You know how I feel about Goldberry. My wife knows how I feel about Goldberry. We read that together. So Tom saves them in two specific situations that are very similar in understanding something that might be like this spectrum that we're kind of alluding to.
We haven't even talked about. He saves them from the tree, but then he saves them
from the Barrow-wights.
Right.
In understanding those, I do think that there's actually allegorical symbolism in both of those contexts, right? Old Man Willow is not a merry fellow, right? He's it kind of represents this incarnation of that wildness. An episode full of illusions, but I'm thinking of Beauty and the Beast and Maurice having the dilemma of the fork in the road, and you go on one side is this beautiful like wooded area that just makes you feel like all of the goldberryness of nature, and then you have the Old Man Willow side, right? You have the dark, craggly, Halloween-themed version of the forest. And Old Man Willow is like a representation of that. I think of even the Zelda games, and there's these trees that have faces, gnarly faces in the side of them.
Doesn't the sign get knocked? That's why he goes the other way.
I think he says it's a shortcut.
Haven't seen that movie.
So, I don't know. It's probably not worth too much analysis. But.
All right, yeah. Anyways, keep going. Old Man Willow.
Yeah, so Old Man Willow. So it's like this spectrum of nature that he protects them from. He's like, okay, the world is kind of dangerous. Like, be careful. You can't just go walking. We have these tumbleweeds in my yard. I think I've talked about these before. They have these just little like needle-like thorns on them, and my kids. We didn't have these tumbleweeds until this last year. They're just like invasive, and they've grown up all around my yard. And so my kids go outside barefoot, and then they come back, and one time I had to like pull out 100 little sliver thorn things from my kids' feet. It's awful, and it's like I'm torturing them in order to get them. Ooh, that reminds me of, anyway, Frodo having to keep going through more pain to solve the pain. And it's like to take tweezers and hurt my kid to help them get out of pain, and they don't know that that's what I'm doing. I feel like some tyrant. I'm so glad it's me and not their mom that does that. There's the Beornness or the wildness of being a dad sometimes, where it almost is like I'm torturing. Yeah. Anyway, that dilemma is real. Yeah. It's a real dilemma as a dad.
Yeah.
Old Man Willow is that, and me in my experience of trying to help protect my kids from the wild, that's what that felt like. And on the other end, the opposite of extreme, something that reminded me more of Philostrato and the sterilization of nature and conquering it to the point of like total ownership, which is not what Tom is. Sterilizing like the surface of the moon. That's what the Barrow-wights reminded me of. Because remember what happens to the other hobbits? We're seeing it through Frodo's perspective, but when he wakes up in the Barrow,
they're all like in white.
Yeah,
and they're
dressed
they're ready for a sacrifice or
right. And there is like story allusion from like Norse mythology to that exact thing, but they're dressed like royalty. What it reminded me of. Oh man, I'm rambling.
Nope, this is good.
Okay. With your permission, I will continue to be a narcissist. What it reminded me of. So there's like the Hansel and Gretel dilemma of devouring mother, or even like Cinderella of the evil stepmother. The reason I'm bringing that up is hopefully this is going to be maybe a little too roundabout or convoluted, but hopefully it'll bring it back. When I was really young when my maternal grandmother died, and my grandpa was single for a lot of my childhood, and he operated as another one of these Tom Bombadil type figures for me. And I have a lot of siblings, but he would take each of us individually, periodically, to spend the night with him, and it was just like the type of comfort and enjoyment that you can only have with like a grandpa that just like is showing that he's spending time with you. It's just like a really magical part of my childhood. And then he got married, and that woman has her own family. And it's easy to like paint her as like evil stepmother, but boy, is that how it feels. And it's, evil step grandma. But one of the things that really changed was his house that felt so much like home to me. And a lot of what I feel like, and a type of wealth that was, surpassed my family home type environment. It just felt like I was this little prince in a castle sort of thing. I just loved, and it just felt so, it was the best time, I'd look forward to that. It was just so comfortable and just happy. And then this step grandma comes into the picture, and she remodels the house, and it's all white. And there's even this room. It's like a family room that has white carpet, and all the couches are nice, and we can't go.
No one's allowed in
No one's allowed in there.
Yeah.
Because it's so nice.
I never understand those rooms.
But it's very smog-ish. It's like the pile of gold that you can't even use anymore. It's having your cake, so you're unwilling to eat it. It's like this thing where you become so sterile. It's taking domestication way too far. It's taming everything to the point where it loses its ability to grow and to be what it is. And that language is very counter what Goldberry talks about, even who Tom is and who she is, right? So I think the Barrow-wights, Tom saves them from that. He's this balancing force. He's the presence of what it means for now to be on the earth, to tame and till the earth, to care for it, to name it, and to not own it. And that's a very difficult thing to comprehend. It's difficult for me to comprehend. I have this dilemma every time I'm taking my kids through the gift shop at the exit of whatever activity we're doing, and they want to buy something. And it's like, I know that there's something good here, and I feel the difficulty too. I want to buy them all the toys that they want. But I think it's good for them to appreciate something and not have to own it. Yeah, you can look at the things that we're passing through. You can appreciate that these toys exist. We don't have to buy everything. And even if we did, you'd probably stop appreciating it anyway. So that's what the Barrow-wights made me feel. Besides the fact that they were ghouly specters of demons reanimating the corpses of ancient kings. There's that too.
Sorry, I didn't even. Oh, okay. I was looking down to see where the quote was coming from today.
Yeah, let's play it because it's about Goldberry.
But before we do that, it seems like a pretty clear allusion when Frodo, in the depths of this moment with the Barrow-wights, I love how it describes this seed of courage in the hobbits, when they seem soft, when they seem petty, when they seem all these things, that deep down there seems like there's something. When Frodo realizes he's going to die, instead of being prey, his spine straightens up and he has this resolve of fight.
Yeah.
So I love that. And then this green light emanates from him. And then what's cool is it's not the courage of that then he like threw a good right hook or something, but it's the courage of he calls on Tom Bombadil.
Yeah.
And the line in my mind was courage to faith. That it's not like Frodo had the power to get out of that situation, but he had the power to have faith. He had the courage to have faith. And then Tom shows up, and then like raising his right hand to raise them from the dead. I mean, come on, J.R. Tolkien.
Not an allegory.
And not in the movie.
Well, you can see why it wouldn't be in the movie.
Yeah, no, they just can't. No, I know it was too much for the movie. That was why it was cool to walk in here and say, they didn't put this in the movie, did they? And I was like, nope.
Yeah, and as a teenager reading these books, I thought it was because Tom was too silly, and it's not that. It's and maybe that's what they told themselves, but really I don't think they could handle it.
Yeah.
You can't handle Tom.
We're going to commission a really good artist. I'm sure they're probably all over the place.
Isn't that something
to do a good Tom Bombadil?
Yeah, something about Tom that Goldberry says is you can't catch him. You know, he's a master.
We're gonna try.
So I'm gonna play a little bit from the beginning of chapter 7. This is Goldberry. I can't remember exactly what part. It was very difficult, and so I've forgotten. It's very difficult to pick just one part because this chapter 7 is that was my favorite chapter. So here we go.
Couldn't tell.
"Let us shut out the night," she said, "for you are still afraid, perhaps, of mist and tree shadows and deep water and untamed things. Fear nothing, for tonight you are under the roof of Tom Bombadil." The hobbits looked at her in wonder, and she looked at each of them and smiled. "Fair Lady Goldberry," said Frodo at last, feeling his heart moved with a joy that he did not understand. He stood as he had at times stood enchanted by fair elven voices, but the spell that was now laid upon him was different. Less keen and lofty was the delight, but deeper and nearer to mortal heart. Marvellous and yet not strange. "Fair Lady Goldberry," he said again, "now the joy that was hidden in the songs we heard is made plain to me. O slender as a willow wand, O clearer than clear water, O reed by the living pool, fair river daughter, O springtime and summertime, and spring again after, O wind on the waterfall, and the leaves' laughter."
This is tricky to talk about. Goldberry is everything that makes nature beautiful. And she's not owned by Tom, but he is the master. And that's a hard thing for us to grapple with. I think there's just too much our cultural social conversation about this is fraught with third rails. There is a responsibility of the knight errant, of the masculine, to be a master. Wear a paper crown, as C.S. Lewis would put it. And the result of that is a type of domesticity that is only really able to be performed by women. You know, Goldberry being this perfect example of the tamed daughter of the river. She's not an elf. She's the daughter of the river. It says that it was like she had the beauty of an elf queen, but she's not. She's just as enigmatic of a being as Tom is. But there's something about like the responsibility of needing somebody like Tom if you're going to have somebody as majestic as Goldberry. And together they're a whole. It's not like you can just have Tom by himself. What's all of his husbandry for?
It all directs back to her.
That's what he says.
Yeah.
It's all about, he's like preoccupied with Goldberry. Preoccupied is a mischaracterization because that doesn't work for Tom. But she's always the forefront of his mind. She's
the source of all of his inspiration to work, of his everything.
Yes. He's going and collecting the water lilies, and they were lucky that it was that time of year. But then also, was it chance? And chance, if that's what you call it. But when you kind of like lean into the flow of creating the domestic bliss and the beauty that grows within there, and I don't know, it's how do we emulate that? I have no idea. Well, I kind of have an idea as far as my part to play in that. It's be like Tom, be safe for the things that grow within my stone walls so that they can not heed the nightly noises, And I've seen just the images, glimpses of the goddess-like character of my wife when things are working that way, and I know that I have a little bit more responsibility than I feel comfortable with.
I'm trying to think if there's something I can add that...
Like you've said before, we're already canceled, so...
Well, I don't have something that I'm avoiding saying. You can cut this part out. I don't. I'm trying to think. The thought that came to mind, maybe this is what I'm avoiding saying. So worried about saying it, I'm shoving it down deep. Is the divine feminine and the divine masculine, and these strengths and gifts that each have been given, can only be they're not realized. The talents, we're not using our talents if we're trying to be both, if we're trying to and what makes Lady Goldberry so powerful of a character is because, and Tom Bombadil such a powerful character, is because it seems like both of them have taken what are natural strengths and owned them, and like owned their crown, owned their space, and I don't even know if I'm not saying this right, but give me a second. Maybe just this. I feel like men and women nowadays men are afraid to lean into masculinity in being a leader in their home, in being in trying to be a husband in the husbandry sense of taming and controlling. And because when we hear control, we hear ownership, domineering and ownership and these things. And women are afraid to lean into domesticity or being tame or these types of aspects. You do see a pushback, like there's kind of there's a Christian movement, I think, about like
the trad wife
type stuff. But it's more, as long as society or our own fears or our own pride is keeping us from leaning into those, you will never be able to really become like Tom Bombadil. You won't be able to have the impact that Tom has. You won't be able to have like that strength, the things that are admirable, the things that leave you, like you said, you just want to read it over and over and just let it like percolate through your soul. Like you're not going to have that impact on your circles and the people around you if you're letting fear and all those things keep you away from it.
Yeah. The thing between you and having there's a phrase or something, maybe it's just a meme about we could be this sort of thing. Like you could be that couple. What might be in the way of you having a Tom and Goldberry relationship is a reluctance to traditional gender roles. That might be what's in the way. And that's hard for me. I feel like I'm really bought in, and that's been kind of a more recent ideological shift for me. And I still feel like the hesitance of that sort of thing. And what is it? And Ransom saying obedience is an erotic necessity. And I think that's like...
I'm not even ready to have a podcast about that.
But there's goodness to that appropriate coupling. And anyway, so I'm not probably the best person to talk about what it means to be the Goldberry, but
Frodo wasn't necessarily the best person to carry the ring, but then he was.
There you go. Yeah, but I do feel the charge to be like Tom. That's the feeling. The feeling through those chapters is, I need to be more like this.
Yeah, and I know the world would be a better place if more men stepped up to be like Tom.
Yeah,
I do know that.
Responsibility, stewardship, husbandry.
Yeah.
And anyway, that's all I have to say about that.
Thank you for being in our book club. If you like the show, please leave a 5-star review. If you don't like it, leave a 1-star review. No, I'm just kidding. And if you'd like to contact us with comments, questions, criticisms, or corrections, you can send us an email or voice memo at bookclub@mountaineer.media, MTNAIR.
We promise we'll come back to C.S. Lewis, but in the meantime, check out our back catalog of episodes where we talk about your favorite C.S. Lewis fiction. In the next episode, we'll be talking about Book 2 of The Fellowship of the Ring.
Until next time.
Okay, see ya. Thanks.
The C.S. Lewis Book Club is sponsored by the Bowsacre Academy Self-Governance Initiative.
Because no one learns better than kids.